My name is Anders and I am the VP of Sales and Marketing for Hegel Music Systems here in Norway. I am going to introduce you to the new Hegel H95 integrated amplifier, talk to you a little bit about the specific features of it, and also talk a little bit about the differences between the H95 and the H90 which it replaces. So let's take a look at these two amplifiers, the H90 to the left and the H95 to the right, sitting here in the middle of the Hegel listening room in Oslo. Looking at them from a distance, they look very much the same. They have the same basic front panel with the same knobs, the same display. Both have a headphone output. They also share the remote, which you can see down here, the RC10. Which many people love, even though it's a fairly simple plastic remote control. If you look at the amplifiers from the inside, they also look very much the same, at least in principle. They both share something we called Hegel Platform 1 or H1. We designed that way of making an amplifier, meaning basically where things sit in relation to one another. Where is the power supply, where is the output stage, where is the preamp, and so on. And we made this back in the 90s for an amplifier called Hegel H1, and it was later also used for the H100, H70, H80, H90, now the H95 and the H120 and H190, and also H160 now that I remember it. So even if they're not the same, the basic placement and topology inside is much the same. If you look at the back panel, you'll see that that is also much the same. The H95 here is exactly the same as the H90 on the right. On the outputs, there is one variable pre-out on the left. There are two normal analog inputs. There are the speaker outputs. There is an optical digital input. Coaxial digital input. There are three optical inputs. There's a USB input and a network input. One special thing about these digital inputs in our integrated amplifiers in the H1 range is that while the network, coaxial and optical inputs accept signals up to 24-bit 192 kHz, the USB is limited to 2496. Why is that? It's basically because we found a USB receiver chip that we could implement and use that gave really good sound, and it didn't cost a fortune. So even if we limited the playback of really high resolution material and also 24-bit 88.2, we could use the money we saved, which is quite a lot, to improve the overall quality of the DA converter, which we think makes a lot of sense. When you look closer on the inside of the amplifier, one of the first things you'll see is that the H90 here has one big toroidal transformer, while the H95 has one big and one smaller. The bigger one actually drives the entire amplifier and DA converter, but the smaller one is used to switch the amplifier on and off. The H95 has a proper standby mode where it uses only 1 watt when in standby, so it saves the environment and is very, very safe to use. The reason for adding this smaller toroidal transformer for the auto standby is because it's the only way we can start it up again with so little power without distorting the sound quality. The biggest difference between these two amplifiers is definitively in the digital domain. Compared to the H90 shown here, the H95 has received both a new streaming board as well as a completely new DA converter. The new streaming board allows us to put more functions into the amp compared to the H90. It's the same streaming board we use in all our integrated amplifiers, including the reference H590. So upon launch, the H95 will have Spotify Connect, but we also hope to be able to give it more features later on. The DA converter is also massively improved. The DA converter sits right here to the back left of the amplifier when looked at it from the front. And the DAC in the H95 is the same as in the H120 and H190. It's a much more expensive DAC. First of all, because it's got a better analog stage, and that really shapes the sound of the amplifier. But there's also a new AKM DAC chip, and there is a better reclocking. So if you're using a digital source to your amplifier, even if you have an H190, the H95 is really worth considering. If you look at the back, right here sits the main preamplifier. While in essence being the same as the H90, it's still upgraded. And the upgrade would subjectively be experienced, in my opinion, as revealing more detail. It's more fluid, it's more musical, it paints a bigger sound stage so you can really hear the flow wide and deep of the speakers. If this is enough for you to make the choice of going from a 90 to an H95, that's not for me to decide, but there is a difference even if you're only using analog sources. If you're using headphones, there's a big upgrade going from a 90 to a 95. Well, the basic principle of the headphone output is that we're taking the signal from the loudspeaker outputs. That way we get a lot of power if you got power-hungry headphones. That is the same in the 95 and the 90, but the signal treatment is much better in the 95, where we have gone a long way to ensure minimal noise. So even if you have really efficient headphones, you will experience the headphone output of the H95 as being super silent and just give you so many details, which is what you want to have when using headphones connected to your amplifier. The main power supply of the H95 and H90 is the same, as is the basic functions of the power amplifier. There are two big bipolar output transistors per channel. It will give you 60 watts per channel into 8 ohms and about 106-107 watts in 4 ohms. Both amplifiers are very capable of driving a 4 ohm load, and even if you have speakers that may dip into 2 ohm, it shouldn't break a sweat. One thing I wanted to mention in the very end are these blue chips down here. There's one per channel. That little blue chip is the sound engine. When we developed them the first time back in the late 90s, they were about this big. Now they're this big. The sound engine, or sound engine 2 in this case, is really the reason why the Hegel amplifiers sound the way they do. The sound engine 2 is really it's an analog computer, and the analog computer in this case takes a sample of the signal that's going into the amplifier and comparing it to the signal that's going out into the loudspeakers. By comparing those two, it can subtract the difference. The difference would be the extra sounds that are generated inside the amplifier circuitry and really being distortion. That's a name for distortion. So it detects the distortion and plays it back in reverse phase. So it dynamically cancels out the distortion and extra sounds that are created inside the amplifier. This very effectively leaves you with almost a mirror image of the signal you're putting in. You get closer to the music. You can hear the microdynamics. You can hear how they're playing the guitar without, wool on their fingers. It's just crispy and nice without ever being hard and unpleasant to listen to. So that is the sound engine. It's a key part of all Hegel amplifiers. So this was a quick introduction to the new integrated H95 amplifier from Hegel. There are a lot of reviews out there, there's a lot of technical information on Hegel.com, and you can always go see your dealer for more updated information and your own personal experience. Enjoy!